Hi everyone, I want to go ahead and make a video going over our Am I the A-hole intervention argument paper. So some of the basics for this paper, it's going to be 4 pages long, double spaced with a works cited page. We're going to have peer review on Monday, October 21st, and peer review feedback due on the 22nd. So going to our usual due dates for peer review. Then the paper itself is going to be due on October 26th. I'm including a sample essay here and on the module so that you can see how I would write this paper, because I did. I literally wrote it just to kind of show students like what I think, how I think you could structure this paper and how I can incorporate evidence and things like that. And basically what you want to do for this paper is I want you to go to the Reddit forum, Am I the A-hole? And I want you to choose one of the posts on there that you think is interesting and that you feel like you could make a good argument about, okay? Now, what kind of post would be a good post? I think the most important thing is that the post is long, and not just long like a person is going on a rant, long like a person is giving a lot of detail, okay? Because the more detail that that person gives you, the easier this paper is going to be to write. Because what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to try and tell both sides of the story. And then you determine who was right and who was wrong in the situation, right? And one of the things that a lot of students struggle with on this paper, I'm just going to tell you, looking for it, I've worked on this a lot, is with going over what is the other side's perspective of the story, the person who didn't write the Reddit post. It's really difficult to try to see that if you choose a short post that doesn't have a ton of detail, right? And so then you're speculating a lot, and there's not a lot of evidence. What you want to do is you want to pick a post that has a lot of detail. And so, for example, you can see my sample essay. I chose a post called, well, my paper's called Happy Birthday. And what happened in that story is there's two fiancés who are arguing, and she says, he said to me, blah, 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 blah. Well, that then is basically a quote from him. And so now I have a little bit of insight into his perspective and what he thinks is right and wrong in the situation and why he's mad at her. Those kinds of details are so crucial. And so you want to make sure that you're finding a post that has that kind of detail, okay? Once you have a post, then you're going to start kind of breaking this down. We have process work like we did with the last paper. And so it's the kind of stuff where you can type it up and then copy and paste it into your essay if you want, or even just write it as an essay if you want, that's fine too. Okay, so I want you to choose a post from Reddit. I want you to summarize the dispute in your own words, and you can incorporate quotes, okay? So don't feel like you have to reword every single thing. Sometimes it can be really good to quote what they've put in the post, okay? To say, they said blah, 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 blah. Okay, you want those quotes there. Consult sources to help support whatever decision you make in terms of who was right and who was wrong in the situation. This could be stuff like a definition for manipulation or a narcissist, or it could be stuff like an article on etiquette, right? That's what I use for my paper. Something from Psychology Today, anything that kind of relates to the conflict and maybe even to relationships more generally could be good. And you can have more than one source, but you have to have at least one, and it cannot be from Reddit. And then I want you to write an intervention, right? So you're going to be providing recommendation for behavior moving forward. You're going to say who was right and who was wrong, and then what these people should do, either to kind of move forward with their relationship, or even if they're separating, or not all of them are romantic relationships, whatever. If they're going to move forward in their life, how do they continue to grow and maybe to form a stronger connection? This paper is worth 20 points, so this is the most point-dense project of the semester, right? And the reason for that is because this is our research paper. We need the practice with research. These are building all of the skills that you're going to need for a lot of your other classes, right? So we're going to have a lot of time for this paper, and we're going to have a lot of process work for this paper that will hopefully help you feel confident when you're turning it in. If you want any kind of insight on how I'm going to be grading this paper, the most important thing with all of our papers is going to be content. So I'm going to be looking at, do you make an argument for one side over the other? And then, are you providing behavior, recommendation for behavior moving forward, things like that. Thesis statement we are going to have for this paper, and I'll give you some tips on how to write that. That'll be worth 3 points. So it's a lot. Organization is worth 4 points. You're going to want to make sure mostly that the paper is balanced in how it's portraying each side. Summary, this is another one that's really important. You want to make sure that you are telling the reader what happened in the situation and giving it a lot of enough explanation that the person doesn't feel like they have to go back and read the post themselves. Okay, so you're giving them all the background. Research, again, you have to have a source, plus you're going to have your source from Reddit. So you should have two sources on your works cited page, and then everything should be formatted in MLA. We're going to go over that too. And then revision and editing. This is really going to be mostly focused on stuff like grammar, mechanics, and kind of language and things like that for this paper, okay? I did want to share too that I do have a sample outline for this essay. This is one of the things that I think a lot of students are like, I have no idea how to format this. I have no idea how to build this paper. And so I have suggestions here. And please let me know if you have any questions about what any of this means. But I think the most important thing to keep in mind for this paper is that you do need to describe both sides of the argument, including the person who didn't write the post. And so there is going to be some speculation. I would just really encourage you to make sure that you're balancing this as much as possible so the paper doesn't feel biased, okay? And then finally, like I said, I wrote a sample essay for you. And so if you want to see how I think the essay could be written, this is what I wrote back in 2022 when I first created this assignment. And it shows you kind of how I would structure the paper, how I'd incorporate sources, how I would format it, and things like that. So if you have any questions about any of the things on the assignment, please contact me. I hope that this is interesting for you, maybe even fun, but it's also great practice for our research paper skills, right? All right, everybody, have a great day, and I will see you soon.